killed, burned houses, took prisoners. In 1758, Delaware Indians, along with French warriors, raided Bard's Mill, a few miles north and east of here, just on the other side of Fairfield. They surrounded the house, they burned it down, they captured a man and a wife and a few of the residents of the house. They killed some of the neighbors, they fled, the settlers chased them, they murdered a 6-month-old baby in front of the mother and father, the Bards. Richard Bard knew that they were going to kill him. Every night they had a little vote on if they would kill one of the party or not, and he knew his time was up. He escaped. He hid under a log. He lived in the mountains for several weeks. He ate rattlesnakes, according to his account. He found his way back to the settlement, and then he set out to find his wife. He spent 2 years looking for his wife. He finally found her near Sunbury, Pennsylvania. He paid £60 to gain her release, and then they returned him to her, and he settled near Chambersburg, where they raised a large family. It's a remarkable story. And the Bard's Mill stood for many years, and this is a much later photograph of it, like in the 1880s. But the Bards have a family history from this area also. It's just this happened just a few years before your family members settled in the area, at least the Speers. Mary Jameson also, in 1758, was kidnapped when her parents were killed and her farm was destroyed. She was taken by the Shawnee Indians. She ended up being taken to near Pittsburgh, which of course at that time was Fort Duquesne. She was sold. She eventually ended up in upstate New York, where along the Genesee River, and she actually was married to several Indian chiefs. She had like 8 children. She became known as the White Squaw of the Genesee. Today, she is buried near Letchworth State Park, Livingston County, I think it is, New York. And she has a statue, and in the 1830s, when she was in her 80s, she was actually interviewed, and she gave details of her kidnapping and her captivity. And she never took advantage of any opportunity to escape, and stayed and actually loved living in that area. Became somewhat of a very wealthy landowner towards the end of her life. But she was taken from a family here in 1758. Now, the Scotch-Irish immigrants believed very firmly that in this area, it was the Quakers that controlled the state of Pennsylvania that were responsible for the settlements being raided. Instead of building forts like the other, border states on the frontier, instead of providing money for militiamen, they tried to sign peace treaties. The Quakers in their peaceful, existence. And then after the French and Indians, Delaware and Shawnee raided into the frontier and murdered their families, the British Army, after the battle, George Washington out there and at Braddock's March and the Battle of Monongahela Hill, they retreated back to Philadelphia. And basically, from 1755 until 1758, the people here were on their own to defend their families as best they could. And they never forgot that. And then the British want to tax the settlers to pay for the costs of the French and Indian War. Taxation with no representation. Let me just tell you that what I've noticed over the years, you don't have any trouble getting the Scotch-Irish to hate the British. You want to raise troops for the Continental Army during the American Revolution? Come on, right here. The Scotch-Irish were kicked out of Scotland or forced to leave Scotland because of religious persecution by the English, and they were forced to live in Ireland. And then they came to this country, and the the British are still pushing them around. So what you find, if you go around cemeteries in this area, and I'm sure you noticed this, at Lower Morse Creek Cemetery, there are lists of the men that served in the Continental Armies or the Pennsylvania State Militia during the Revolutionary War. They want to fight the British. You don't have any, not doing any arm pulling. The Germans, now that's a different story. The Germans don't, they're kind of wishy-washy, Pennsylvania Germans about fighting against the English, but not the Scotch-Irish. Okay, so I want to stop there and I'll answer any questions you might have. I just hit a bunch of random topics about early settlement in this area, and I hope it gave you a little more insight into what some of these people are thinking. I think that's the last slide I had. Oh yeah, okay, I did. Okay.
That's the last slide.
You have any questions? Or you can copy if you want.
I'd like to know why that little bit of Maryland sticks out there. When we drove up here, I couldn't figure that out.
Or Cumberland.
You know, we're over to the west, there's that little.
Oh, okay. It's because, well, it's just coincidentally because that's the Potomac River. The Potomac River is the boundary between Virginia and Maryland. Now, Maryland did not know where this line was going to go across. Remember, they wanted that skinny part of Maryland to be much wider.
Oh, okay.
But what happened was the boundary of Virginia and Maryland was already established by the state of Virginia. So that place you're talking about up near, out near Frostburg or Williams. I was going to say Williamsport. What is it? Beyond Hagerstown there, Cumberland, Maryland, let's say.
Yeah.
That little skinny part.
Yeah.
Now, if the line of Pennsylvania, Maryland had been higher, that would be wider. But when they really didn't have any control over that. But that's why it's the Potomac River that establishes that skinny part of Maryland. Very good. You're welcome to, if you don't have any questions now, you're welcome to ask me questions here while I'm backing up myself. Any other questions?
One of your slides, the one where it showed ownership of slaves, you skipped by the next slide, which had the name John SPEER on it.
Okay.
What was that?
I'm not sure.
One of the very first.
Okay, yeah, I'll do it this way. We can get to it now that the computer's working. I say normally the computer works really nice. I think every time I go into a different area where maybe it would have been easier. Okay, where is it? Oh, get on here. Okay. Oh, that's already good. Jump back.
Do that.
Yeah, I'm messing it up. As long as I don't save, it'll be all right. Oh, I put it up there. Okay. Oh yeah, John SPEER Farmer. I don't know. Who's John? Which one? Is that one of, I guess that's one of Robert's sons?
I think it was maybe James' son, because he had this son that was born in 1757. Well, I don't know, but he had a son born in 1757, and James was older than Robert.
Okay. So I just got this a small part of the list. I just got a few of the estimates.
What's the date of the list?
1807. It's the 1807 septennial census. And basically what was going on here was at some early point, I forget the year, the state of Pennsylvania decided to have a list made every 7 years, septennial. And it's a list of taxpayers in Pennsylvania. So they're just listing the taxpayers. And they're listing their occupations and other things that are taxable about them. And so then they use those lists to give an idea of how many, what the taxes are going to be from each township. And in Adams County, we have these tax lists starting in the 1780s. And so, I realize that, you guys are interested in the SPEER family.